Haginev Shabbos Parshas Matois and also Masei. This is Mamash the Shabbos of Yichud, right before going into the 9 days, where the entire world is going to be learning the same parasha. Baruch Hashem, took long enough, but we're back on schedule. The Torah tells us about Nedarim. You know, Nedarim is a big deal. We start off Yom Kippur with Kol Nidrei. Obviously, there's something very, very powerful happening over here. The Ksav Sefer points out that when the Torah tells us to keep our word, it uses a double lashon. It says, Lo yachel devarei, number one. Make sure that what you say actually happens. And number two, something like that. Whatever comes out of your mouth, do it. Sounds like the same thing. Ksav Sefer clarifies it's not the same thing. There's a shtei dvarim, two inyanim. You see, there are two parts of the nether. First part of the nether is when the guy actually says the nether. The guy wins $10 million. And he's like, whoa, very geschmack. I make a nether right now. I'm going to give 20% to Leiv Lachim, to my local shul, to my local, wherever I'm supposed to give my tzedakah to. Good. That's part one. Make sure that it actually happens. Then is part number two. When you sit down to write that check, it could be, might not be as geschmack as when you made the nether. You know, writing out a $20 million check is, could be some of that geschmack, that like excitement wore off. The Torah tells us no, hang on to that. Hang on to the geschmack, the excitement of the neder when you're actually doing the ma'aseh. In the Sefer, Yagdil Torah, it brings down the Meir Shapiro of Lublin. Yeah? Famous for the Daf Yomi, but he's did a lot of other things too. He always said over this Maisa, yeah, who are your aimer this Maisa? You see, 400 years ago, also in Lublin, there was a Rosh Yeshiva by the name of Maharshal. That's probably not what they named him at his bris, but the Maharshal was Rosh Yeshiva in Lublin 400 years ago, give or take, a couple of months. And he had a Talmid, Rahman al-Atzlan, his wife passed away. And months and months after the Petira, Maharshal saw that he still was Eismensch. So he went over to him and he said, on his deathbed, Meir Shapiro said that he didn't have any children, biologically, but he said, Chachmei Lublin is my child. Every one of his Talmidim was mamash his child. And he went over to him and he said, my tire kind, how come you're not pulling it together? What's going on? So Tom looked at his Rebbe and he said, before my wife passed away, she made me promise, make a neder, a shvua, a koinam, whatever it was, that I would not remarry. And that's why I can't pull myself back together. I'm never going to remarry. This is the rest of my life. The Maharshal looks at his Talmud and he says, go get married. I mitzvah you to get married. He said, I made another. He says, that's on me. Go get married. Oh, so Talmud said, Rabbi told me to go get married. Good. He put himself out there and he called his local shatzchen, and a couple of weeks later he was married, because that's how shidduchim works. And Baruch Hashem, they made him all chasana, and just a couple of days after he got remarried, he died. The town was in an uproar. Maharshal told the Chevra Kadisha, prepare a regular burial for him, but don't start any proceedings until you call me. So they prepared him, they prepared the plot of land, and then they called the Maharshal. And he showed up in the basic verse, and he went over to the mace, to his Talmud, and he took out a piece of paper and a pen, and he wrote, I am paskening the psak halacha with the koyach of Bezdin that this younger man not only was shoroi but mitzuveh to get remarried, and I command you, Bezdin Shel Mala, to give him back to me. And he signed his name. He rolled up this piece of paper, don't try this at home, and put it into the hand of his dead Talmud. Tell the Chevra Kadisha, go home. Clear their basic varas, make sure no one's around, everyone go home. First he said, bury him, put him down into the ground, but don't cover him with dirt. I guess in order to actually meet the Bezin Shalmala, that's to be a kvura. So they buried him, but they didn't put the dirt on top yet, and then they cleared the area. A couple hours later, as I'm sure you guessed, he popped out. He came home. He came walking down the street in his techroichem, probably a couple of car accidents along the way, and he walked into his house, and his second wife was sitting at the table, and he said, "Hey, honey, I'm home." And she did not take it well. She panicked. She freaked out. She saw a ghost. Her dead husband just came home in his burial shrouds. Yes. So she ran to the Maharshal, and the Maharshal came over to the house and said, Shalom Bracha, totally unsurprised, unfazed, of course, and said, all right, get dressed and come back to yeshiva. Let's go. Come on, you're missing Seder. So he changed, and the next morning he came back to yeshiva, and the guys in yeshiva didn't take it very well either, because they were supposed to be at his levaya the day before, and the whole town was just freaking out. So the Maharshal commanded the malach in charge of forgetfulness, shikha, that the entire town should forget this ma'aseh ever happened. V'kan all you Litvaks out there are trying to figure out how we know the story. Chevra Kadisha wrote it down before the town forgot it. And that's how we have this Kishmak Maisa. You have to understand that this was a very specific case of a neder that was not supposed to be fulfilled. He promised his first wife that he wouldn't remarry. Maharshal said he shouldn't. But Chazon Ish is quoted saying that really, absolutely everything that comes out of our mouth should have the din of a neder, should have the severity of a neder, should have the punishment of a neder. But the Rebbeinu Shalom, in his infinite wisdom and kindness, knew that we would not be able to handle that. So he gave us this chelik, nedarim, karnamas, shavuos, naziros. This is what you have to follow through to the absolute nth degree. Everything else, human fallities, but really we have to take everything that comes out of our mouth with the utmost importance and magnitude, and all those other things that mean that it's very important. Have a wonderful, beautiful, meaningful Shabbos. Kol Tov. Good Shabbos.